He put his key in the lock of a house he hadn't seen in 12 years, and heard a child laughing on the other side. For a second, Robert thought he had the wrong address. This was supposed to be his empty escape in the Vermont countryside. A place his lawyer swore no one had touched in over a decade. A place his cardiologist said would save his life if he could finally slow down. Instead, his first step out of the car hit him with shock. The old wooden gate at the end of the gravel drive was bright blue now, not weather-beaten gray. Fresh paint. Someone had taken the time to sand it, fix the hinge, and brush on that cheerful color he would never have chosen. He pressed his palm to his chest. The scar there still felt strange under his shirt. 3 weeks since the heart attack on the 47th floor boardroom. 3 weeks since the doctors told him, "Robert, you push one more quarter like that, you're not going to see next year." No stress, no work, 2 months of total rest. That was the deal. Yet his pulse was already racing. The garden that used to be a jungle of weeds was alive. Neat rows of tomatoes, herbs spilling from terracotta pots, wildflowers in bright chaos around the porch. The grass was cut. The windows gleamed. His abandoned vacation house looked more loved than it ever had when I owned it. "How?" he murmured. He pushed the blue gate. It swung open without a sound. Someone had oiled it. That's when he heard it. Not just laughter. Tiny feet pounding wood floors. A baby squealing. A woman's voice shushing, soothing. His heart stuttered. He climbed the 3 porch steps slower than he ever had, counting in his head like Dr. Henry taught him. In for 3. Hold for 3. Out for 3. Don't spike your blood pressure. Don't die on the doorstep. The front door, his front door, was wide open. He stepped into a scene that didn't belong to him. A little girl in mismatched socks dashed across the living room, clutching a ragged doll. A chubby baby boy crawled over a soft rug Robert had never seen in his life. Clean laundry sat folded in a wicker basket on his leather couch. And on that couch, a young woman paused mid-fold, dark hair in a messy bun, hands trembling. Their eyes locked. She looked like she'd been caught stealing air. "Who are you?" Robert's voice came out harsher than he intended. The basket slipped from her knees. Tiny shirts and socks scattered across the floor. I can explain," she whispered. "Explain why you're in my living room." The edge in his tone made the baby flinch and the girl freeze. The girl ran behind the woman's legs, peeking out with huge, scared eyes. "Mom," she whispered, Is he the police?" The woman swallowed hard. "No, Mary. She looked at Robert like the word hurt. "He's the owner." Owner. The word hit him like a slap. For 12 years, he'd been too busy building his empire to drive up here even once. And now strangers said it like a fact. This was his house, but their home. "I left this place empty," Robert snapped. "How long have you been here? Who let you in?" "No one," the woman said. "The door in the back was broken. It was winter. We were freezing. I thought." "You thought you could just break into someone's property and move in." The baby's face crumpled. Then came the wail. The little girl covered her ears. The woman stepped forward, hands raised like she was trying to protect them from his anger alone. "Please. My name is Rose. These are my kids, Mary and Peter. We had nowhere else to go." Robert's chest tightened. Not the medical kind of tight. A different kind. One he didn't like. "Pack your things," he said. "You're leaving. Now." "Sir, please." Her voice cracked on the word. "My husband died last year. I lost my job. We fell behind on rent. The landlord kicked us out. We slept in the car until it broke down outside this village." His jaw clenched. This was exactly the kind of drama Dr. Henry had told him to avoid. "You should have gone to shelter," Robert muttered. "We did. They were full. Mr. Martin at the general store said this place was empty, that nobody had seen you in years. I swear, I thought you'd abandon it." She gestured helplessly at the spotless room, the fresh flowers on the table. "I cleaned. I fixed leaks. I planted the garden. I just needed a roof for my kids." The little girl tugged Rose's shirt. "Mommy, are we going to live in the car again?" she whispered. "Again." The word echoed through Robert's head. He pressed his fingers into his temples. He came here to escape pressure. Now it was pounding from the inside. He could call the police. He should call the police. But as he looked at the trembling woman, the crying baby, the little girl who'd asked if she'd have to sleep in a car again, his own empty New York penthouse flashed in his mind. Pristine, silent, shiny, and completely, utterly lifeless. He exhaled slowly. "You can't stay here," he said. "This isn't a shelter. It's my recovery place. I need peace." "Give me 2 weeks," Rose begged. "Just 15 days. I'll find a job, an apartment. We'll leave on our own. You'll never hear from us again. Please don't put my kids on the street." Rain tapped against the clean window panes, though he hadn't even noticed the sky darken. His cardiologist's voice fought with his conscience in his head. 10 days. 12 years of neglect on his part. 3 strangers who had turned a corpse of a house into something that, for the first time, almost looked like a home. He shut his eyes, inhaled once more, and made a decision that would rip his old life apart. 10 days, he said quietly. You get 10 days to figure something out. But I'm staying here too. It's still my house. Her legs seemed to give out. She grabbed the back of the couch to steady herself, tears spilling over. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know what this means." He wasn't sure he did either. As he watched her gather tiny clothes off the floor with shaking hands, one thought clawed at him. Was he giving kindness or inviting disaster into the only place left to save his failing heart? And how do you share a roof with someone you just threatened to throw out into the street? If you walked into your locked house and found a stranger's family living there, what would you do in Robert's place? Tell me in the comments. He hadn't meant to fall asleep in a stranger's home, but the smell of real food and the soft creak of the old house had lulled him under. Robert woke to the hiss of something frying and the rich scent of fresh coffee. For a moment he panicked. Hospital? Office? Then the blue-painted gate, Rose's terrified eyes, and the 10-day deal snapped back into place. He swung his legs off the bed and froze. The sheets were clean. Not musty from 12 years of abandonment, but crisp and warm, like someone had washed and tucked them in just for him. He hadn't asked anyone to do that. He padded to the doorway, one hand automatically brushing his chest. Everything felt normal. No tightness. No racing. The kitchen was sunlit, almost annoyingly cozy. Rose stood at the stove in faded floral apron, limping just slightly, flipping eggs in a pan. Mary sat at the table, tongue sticking out as she drew on the back of an old envelope. Peter dozed in a second-hand high chair, fist still wrapped around a piece of crust. "Good morning," Rose said without turning, as if he'd always been part of this picture. "Coffee's ready. I didn't know how you like your eggs, so I made them 3 ways. He opened his mouth to tell her he could make his own breakfast. Nothing came out. Instead, he sat. The mug she slid in front of him was strong, dark, and exactly the way he'd always made it in New York. "How did you?" "You had 2 open bags of dark roast in the pantry." "Men don't buy that unless they really like their coffee bitter," she said softly, rinsing a spoon. So she'd gone through his pantry, his cabinets, his life, and somehow he didn't feel violated. Just seen. His phone buzzed on the table. "Morning, heart patient." Dr. Henry's cheerful voice boomed through the speaker. "Are you in the cabin yet?" "In the house," Robert said. "Yeah." "Good. Remember, no work, no drama, no adrenaline. You get bored for 2 months, or I put you back in a hospital bed. How's your pulse?" Robert glanced at the woman moving quietly around his kitchen, at the children who now somehow lived in his hallway. "Complicated." "Fine," he lied. "Good. I'll swing by tomorrow anyway." "And Robert?" The doctor's tone shifted. "Don't try to be a hero. Your heart is not a startup you can push to scale." After the call, a shadow passed the front window. The door flew open without a knock. "Rose, brought those tomatoes you asked for." An older man with kind eyes and a shock of white hair stepped inside, then stopped dead when he saw Robert. "Well, I'll be," he said slowly. "You must be Robert." He stuck out his hand with rustic enthusiasm. "I'm Martin. Run the general store down the road. Rose has been keeping this place from falling apart. Good to finally meet the man behind the deed." "Keeping it from," Robert repeated. Martin clapped him on the shoulder. "She talks about you all the time. The owner this, the owner that. When he comes back," he winked at Rose. "Long-distance relationships, huh?" Tough, but you two seem to be managing. Rose nearly dropped the knife she was holding. It's not like that, Mr. Martin. I never. Don't be shy, girl. The old man chuckled. Nice to see a family already formed. Kids like him, that's clear. Family. The word made something hot and cold flash through Robert at the same time. We're not, he started. Martin, really, Rose cut in, cheeks blazing. You misunderstood. I told you I'm waiting to leave when the owner comes back, not waiting to meet him. The old man's smile faded as the truth sank in. Ah. Silence, thick and uncomfortable, wrapped around the room. Martin cleared his throat. Well, misunderstanding or not, the tomatoes are still good. You need anything, Rose, you holler. He tipped an imaginary hat at Robert. You too, Mr. Billionaire. We may be a small village, but we don't bite. When he left, the house felt smaller. Robert looked at the tray of eggs, the homegrown tomatoes, and the hot coffee. He had more money than this entire town combined. Yet this man had spoken to him like another neighbor, not a walking checkbook. Rose avoided his eyes, focusing on wiping a tiny, invisible stain from a counter. I didn't mean for them to think, she mumbled. That we're together, he finished. She flinched, then gave a tight laugh. Yeah, that. The last thing you want people thinking is that you're with a squatter. He wondered if she actually believed that was the worst thing that could happen to him. Outside, he noticed for the first time the extent of her work. A neat chicken coop patched together from scrap wood. Sturdy shelves she'd installed in what used to be a dusty storage room. Old leaking pipes, now tightly wrapped and quiet. She hadn't just occupied his house. She'd nursed it back from the dead. If stories like this, where a cold mansion turns into a real home, pull at your heart, hit subscribe so you don't miss how this one unfolds. That night, restless, Robert wandered into the dark kitchen for water. A single lamp glowed over the table. Rose sat hunched over a pile of papers, rental listings, job ads, numbers scrawled in the margins. Her lips moved as she did the math. Can't sleep, he asked. She jerked, shoving the papers together as if they were contraband. Sorry. I didn't wake you, did I? No. What are you doing? Just looking at apartments. There's a place about 2 hours away. Tiny, but the landlord doesn't mind kids. She tried to sound upbeat and failed. If I take 2 part-time jobs, we might barely make the rent. He saw the crossed-out numbers, the NO pets circled in red, the note, asterisk too far from school. Too expensive. No buses, asterisk. 8 days left, she said mostly to herself. I'll figure something out. I always do. When she turned off the lamp and slipped down the hall, she left one page, by accident. A little box in the corner. Food budget, $40/week, circled 3 times. Robert stood alone in the dark kitchen, holding that scrap of worry in his hand. His chest tightened again. Only this time, he knew it had nothing to do with blocked arteries. How do you throw a woman like that out and still live with yourself? And if he let her stay, what would it cost a man whose entire life was already built on never letting anyone get close? The scream ripped through the morning quiet like a siren. Robert shot up, heart pounding. For a split second, he thought this is it, the second heart attack. Then he realized it wasn't his chest. Mommy. Mary's voice shrilled from the hallway. Mommy, are you okay? He stumbled out of bed, nearly tripping over his own shoes, and followed the sound to the bathroom. Rose was on the floor, one hand death-gripped on the sink, the other clutching her ankle. Water pooled around her. What happened? He asked, dropping to his knees beside her. I slipped, she hissed, trying to breathe through the pain. Peter knocked over his bath toys last night. I forgot to mop it up. Her ankle was already swelling, angry and red. Can you stand? He asked. She tried to put weight on it and cried out, collapsing back. Mary burst into tears. Peter, confused by the commotion, started wailing from his crib. Okay, don't move, Robert said firmly. I've got you. He slid one arm under her knees and one around her back. She tensed as he lifted her, but she was lighter than he expected. Put me down, she protested weakly. You're not supposed to, your heart. You're not supposed to walk on that. He carried her to the couch. Doctor's orders. You're not a doctor, she muttered. I'm a doctor's most stubborn patient. That has to count for something. It was the first time she let herself actually smile in front of him. Mary hovered, eyes wide. "Is Mommy going to die?" she asked in a small voice. The question hit Rose like a bullet. "No, honey," she said quickly. "I just twisted my ankle." "She'll be fine," Robert added, "but she needs rest." Which means he looked around at the disorder building by the second. "I'm on duty." For the next few hours, the mighty Robert Hale, CEO, dealmaker, man who'd move markets with a single phone call, discovered what real hard work was. Peter screamed every time he tried to put him down. Mary insisted the cat, a scruffy gray thing named Whiskers, was starving to death and needed a very specific brand of food she didn't know where Rose kept. He burned the rice. Twice. A tower of dishes threatened to avalanche every time he looked at it. By noon, he was soaked, sweaty, and had more pureed carrots on his shirt than Peter did. "How do you do this every day?" he panted, bouncing a finally drowsy Peter on his shoulder. "Practice," Rose said from the couch, an ice pack on her ankle, laughter shining in her tired eyes. "Lots and lots of practice." "It's impossible," he groaned. "You closed a 7-figure deal in under an hour according to Google," she teased. "You can handle diapers and rice." He blinked. "You Googled me." "Of course I did," she said simply. "A millionaire whose name is on the deed to the house I'm squatting in? I needed to know what kind of man you were." "And?" he asked, weirdly nervous. She held his gaze. "I still haven't decided." Around that time, Mr. Martin barged in without knocking, carrying grocery bags. "Heard there was trouble," the old man said, "so I brought real food." He looked from Rose on the couch to Robert with a baby strapped to his chest in a makeshift carrier. "Well, look at that. Domestic bliss." "Martin," Rose warned. "Hush, girl. Let an old man enjoy the view." He headed for the kitchen. "I'll cook. You two look like you fought a war." Half an hour later, the house smelled like roasted chicken and herbs. They all sat around the table, Rose with her leg propped on a chair, Mary chattering, Peter gumming bread, Martin telling some long-winded village story. "Families should always eat together," Martin declared, dishing food onto plates. "We're not a family," Robert said automatically. "Not yet." The old man winked. "But this house sure thinks you are." Rose's face flamed again. "Mr. Martin, stop. You want me to stand by and watch your best chance at a real home walkout because of some city nonsense?" he scoffed, nodding at Robert. "This place was a ghost before you, son. Empty for 12 years. A house needs laughter in the walls, or it rots." "It's my house," Robert said, more gently than yesterday. "It's not that simple." "Sure it is. You adults like to complicate what's simple," Martin muttered, grabbing his coat. "Anyway, that's my sermon for the day." When he left, the silence he'd warned them about crept back in. "Sorry," Rose said softly. "He shouldn't have pushed like that." "You don't have to apologize for everyone in this town," Robert replied. "You already apologize for existing." Her eyes flashed hurt. "That's not fair." "Neither is life," he said. It came out more bitter than he meant. After lunch, Mary fled to her room in tears when Rose gently reminded her they'd be leaving soon. Robert found her curled on the bed, a doll clutched to her chest. "Are you really making us go?" she asked in between hiccups. "I like it here. I like Whiskers. And Mom smiles more here." He sat on the edge of the bed, feeling a weight he didn't know how to name. "I don't know," he admitted. "I honestly don't know what I'm doing anymore." Mary frowned. "Adults are supposed to know." He let out a humorless laugh. "Trust me, we're just better at pretending." That evening, he stood alone on the porch as the sun bled orange behind the hills. The sounds of the house drifted out, the cartoon theme song from the old TV, Mary complaining about bedtime, Rose's soft murmur as she read Peter to sleep. He thought of his apartment in New York. Silent. Stainless steel leather stone. No toys on the floor. No scribbles on the fridge. He'd always told himself he liked it that way. Now, for the first time, that life looked less like success and more like a very polished kind of loneliness. Was he really going to send these kids back to sleeping in cars and shelters just to keep his schedule of solitude? Or was letting them stay the one risk his damaged heart couldn't afford? If you were Mary's age and someone like Robert told you to leave the only place that felt like home, whose side would you be on, his or hers? Let me know in the comments. Love sometimes sneaks in as chaos. Other times it arrives in a tree with claws. Whiskers won't come down. Mary's shriek rattled the kitchen window. Robert rushed outside, half expecting to see the cat being carried off by an eagle. Instead, Whiskers was perched high in the old maple, yowling like his 9 lives were already used up. He climbed up to chase a squirrel, and now he's stuck, Mary sobbed. He's scared Uncle Robert. Uncle. The word slipped out of her so naturally that nobody corrected it. You can't climb that, Rose said quickly, limping after him. With your heart. And you can't with that ankle, he shot back. They argued in frantic whispers under the tree while the cat howled above them. I'm lighter, she insisted. I'm taller, he countered. And if my doctor finds out either of us fell out of a tree, he'll kill me before the heart does. In the end, Mary crossed her arms. While you two argue, Whiskers is going to die, and it will be all your fault. That decided it. Robert climbed slowly. Every shift of his weight made the branch creak and his chest thump. By the time he reached the cat, sweat beaded his forehead. Come here, you ungrateful fur ball, he muttered, reaching carefully. Whiskers responded by hissing and digging his claws into Robert's arm. Okay, I get it, you don't want to die either, Robert grumbled, grabbing the cat by the scruff anyway. Be careful. Rose called up, hand pressed to her mouth. He glanced down, and for a dizzy second, all he saw was her face, pale with worry, eyes locked on him like he was the only thing in the world that mattered. His heart did something strange and warm that had nothing to do with his climb. By the time he made it to the ground, his arms were shredded, his muscles ached, and Whiskers immediately bolted, right back toward the house, perfectly fine. You okay? Rose stepped in close, fingertips brushing his chest. Your face is so red. Just out of shape, he panted. And stupid, she murmured, but there was relief in her smile. For a moment, neither of them moved. Her hand stayed on his shirt, feeling the pounding beneath. He didn't want her to pull it away. Then a sleek black car crunched down the gravel drive, shattering the moment. Robert stiffened even before the Mercedes came into view. The woman who stepped out looked like she belonged on a magazine cover about powerful people. Immaculate suit, sharp heels, sunglasses worth more than Rose's entire monthly budget. Found you, she said, sliding the glasses down. I had to drive 3 hours into nowhere, but I found you. Rose instinctively stepped closer to the house. Who is she? She whispered. My former business partner, Robert said, jaw tightening. Patricia. Patricia's eyes flicked over Rose once, from her worn t-shirt to the taped-up sandal on her injured foot, and dismissed her. So this is where you've been hiding, Patricia said. In a farmhouse. With stray cats, and she waved a manicured hand toward the porch. Bonus humans. He felt Rose shrink behind him. What do you want, Patricia? He asked. To talk about the company you've abandoned, she snapped. And the investors are wondering why our golden boy went off-grid. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You built that empire, Robert. With me. You can't walk away to play house with a widow and 2 kids that aren't even yours. Watch it, he warned. Rose flinched like she'd been slapped. If this kind of story, choosing between cold success and messy love, hits something in you, subscribe so you don't miss where his choice takes him. Patricia looked from the garden to the patched-up windows, disgust curling her lip. You always told me you'd never be tied down. That marriage wasn't for men like us. And now you're here? Risking your health, your fortune, your brand for what exactly? What I do with my life stopped being your business when you moved into the corner office without asking, he said quietly. Her eyes flashed. You had a heart attack, Robert. I ran the company. I kept it alive. I defended you. Now you're telling me you're just done. He thought of late nights under fluorescent lights, the taste of burnt coffee, the panic that had crawled up his arm and into his chest that day. Then he thought of Mary's laugh, Peter's chubby hand grabbing his finger, Rose humming, as she cooked with the window open. I'm saying, he replied slowly, that I don't want to die at my desk. Patricia stared at him, as if he'd started speaking another language. I have buyers lined up, she said finally. If you're not coming back, I'll sell my shares and move on. Once that happens, there's no going back. Are you sure this is the hill, or should I say the hillbilly you want to die on? Sell, he said. Even Rose sucked in a breath. It was the company of your life, Patricia whispered. It was my life, he corrected. That's the problem. Patricia's gaze darted to Rose again. This is insane. You're throwing away millions for charity." She spat the last word like poison. "She's a project, Robert. You'll get tired of playing the hero." He glanced back at Rose, who stood frozen, hurt carved into every line of her face. "This isn't about charity," he said. "It's about finally choosing something that doesn't come with a quarterly report." Patricia shook her head, laughed in disbelief, and turned on her heel. "You'll regret it," she called over her shoulder. "Remember that when she leaves, and you've burned the only world you were actually good at." When the dust from her car settled, Rose spoke so quietly he almost missed it. "You can't do that," she said. "You can't sell your company because of this. Because of us." "It's my company to sell," he said. "And it's my life to protect," she replied. "I heard what she said. I won't be the woman everyone blames when your empire crumbles." Later, when the kids were down, she cornered him in the kitchen. "I found a place," she said, arms wrapped around herself. "A small apartment 2 hours away. The rent is barely within reach if I work nights. The landlord allows kids. We will move in 3 days." "That's before the 10 days are up," he said, throat tight. "I know. The sooner we go, the sooner you go back to your real life." She forced a smile. "Thank you for letting us stay. You've done more than enough." When she disappeared into the back room, he grabbed the half-empty bottle of whiskey Martin had forgotten last visit and sat on the porch. The stars were blinding. The house behind him buzzed with the faint sounds of life he knew he would miss. "Are you letting her walk out?" Martin's voice drifted from the darkness. The old man eased himself into the chair beside him like he'd grown from the porch itself. "She wants to go," Robert said. "And what do you want?" Martin asked. He stared at the blue-painted gate. "I don't know." "Bull," the old man snorted. "You know. You're just scared to say it." Scared. He'd climbed corporate ladders, faced down investors, and survived a heart attack. But he couldn't deny it. Was he really about to lose the first real taste of family he'd had in years because fear was louder than love? And if he tried to hold on to them, would he ruin the very life he was falling in love with? Some truths you stumble into by accident. Others you find where they're not meant to be found. The next morning, the house felt different. Suitcases lay open on the bed in the back room, half filled with neatly folded clothes. Mary's doll peeked out a side pocket, as if it wasn't even ready to leave. "You're really packing already?" Robert asked, leaning on the doorframe. Rose didn't stop folding. "The cab I can afford comes early. I want everything ready. You still have 4 days." "The job starts tonight," she said. "Night shift at a diner on the highway. If I'm late, they'll give it to someone else. I can't risk that." He stepped into the room, feeling like an intruder in his own house and her life. "You don't have to go like this." "Yes, I do." She finally looked up, and he saw the sleepless circles under her eyes. "Robert, the longer we stay, the harder it is. For Mary. For me." "For me?" he asked before he could stop himself. Her gaze flicked away. "For all of us," she hedged. They were saved from saying more by Dr. Henry's arrival. The doctor swept into the kitchen, filling it with his usual mix of jokes and thinly disguised worry. "Let me see if your heart survived rural air and homemade cooking," he said, pressing the stethoscope to Robert's chest. Henry's brows rose. "Pressure's better than when we sent you up here." "Sleeping." "More than in the city," Robert admitted. "Working." Henry narrowed his eyes. "No. Falling in love with your squatters." Henry shot back casually. Robert froze. "What?" Henry glanced toward the hallway, where Rose's laughter echoed faintly as she coaxed Peter into a clean shirt. "Son, I've known you a long time. You talk about a new business deal less tenderly than you just said her name." "I didn't say her name," Robert muttered. "You didn't have to. Your face did." Henry sighed. "Look, I'm a cardiologist, not a therapist, but I know this much. You almost died alone. If life dumps a second chance and a ready-made family on your doorstep, maybe don't push it off the porch." "If I tell her how I feel, I trap her," Robert said. "I have money. She doesn't. She already feels like a burden. I can't be another man dictating her life." "Who said anything about dictating?" Henry asked. "Just tell her the truth. I like you. I want you to stay. What she does with that is her choice. And if she says no..." Then at least you're not left wondering for the rest of your hopefully longer life. The doctor left with a clap on his shoulder, but the words stayed. That afternoon, the house was unusually quiet. Rose had taken the kids to say goodbye to Martin and a few neighbors. Robert wandered, restless, until he ended up in the back room again. One small backpack sat open on the bed. Inside, a worn notebook, the cheap kind you buy in bulk. He knew he shouldn't. He knew this was the worst kind of invasion. But his hand moved anyway. He opened it somewhere in the middle. Asterisk, kids hungry again. Cars out of gas. I don't know what to do. Found a big house at the edge of the village. Empty. Windows are dirty, weeds everywhere. Can I really break in? God, is this a sin? But Mary's lips are blue from the cold. Asterisk. He flipped further. Asterisk, clean 3 rooms today. It feels wrong to love this place when it's not mine. Peter laughed in his sleep. Maybe he finally feels safe. Asterisk. Then he found yesterday's entry. Asterisk. Robert came back. I thought it was over. But he didn't call the cops. Gave us 10 days. Who does that? He's kinder than any rich man has a right to be. It's dangerous to like him. Must not get attached. Must not let kids get attached. He'll leave. Or we will. Asterisk. A fresh page, with tear-stained ink. Asterisk. I think I'm falling for him. This is absurd. I am a broke widow squatting in his house. He deserves someone without baggage. Need to leave before he realizes how messed up I am. Asterisk. His vision blurred. You're reading my journal. Her voice came from the doorway, raw and cold. He snapped the book shut like it had burned him, and turned. Rose stood there, eyes wild, knuckles white around the doorframe. Rose, You had no right. She stormed in and snatched the notebook from his hands. That is private. I know. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. He struggled to find words. I needed to understand why you're running out the door like the house is on fire. Now you know, she said bitterly, hugging the journal to her chest. I'm pathetic. I fell for the man whose house I broke into. You can add that to the list of sins when you tell this story at parties. This isn't a joke, he said hoarsely. Exactly, she snapped. So don't stand there and pity me, Robert Hale. You already did more than enough. You gave us a roof, food, time. I will not let you give me feelings, too. That's not charity you can write off on your taxes. I don't pity you, he said. Don't say anything, she cut in, voice shaking. Don't you dare tell me you don't feel the same to make this easier. I can't take one more man telling me I'm a mistake to love. What if I told you I do, he blurted. The room went silent. She blinked. What? I feel the same, he repeated, stepping closer. I've been going crazy trying not to. I've known you for a week, and somehow everything in me rearranged itself around you and those kids. When Mary calls me uncle, it does something to me I can't even name. When you limp, I want to carry you. When you laugh, He broke off, overwhelmed by his own honesty. This is insane, she whispered. You barely know me. You don't know how moody I get when I'm tired, or how I cry at commercials, or how I sometimes forget to pay the electric bill because I spent the last $5 on ice cream for the kids. I know enough, he said softly. I know you turned a dead house into a living home. I know you'd rather work 3 jobs than take a handout. I know you'd walk away from the first safe place you've had in years to protect someone else's future. He swallowed. And I know letting you go will hurt more than any corporate loss I've ever taken. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm scared, she whispered. I loved my husband. He went to work one day and never came back. A beam fell. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. How am I supposed to trust that a man whose heart already tried to quit on him won't leave me the same way? You can't know that, he admitted. I can't promise I'll never die. No one can. But I can promise that while I'm alive, I'll wake up every day choosing you. Choosing the kids. Choosing this messy, scary, beautiful life. She shook her head, backing away. You don't know that either. You think you do now, but what happens when the boredom sets in? When do you miss your office and your suits and your deals? I can't be your midlife crisis experiment, Robert. She brushed past him, wiping her cheeks angrily. Let me go, she said. Please. Before this hurts worse. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving him alone with the echo of everything he hadn't said right. Had he just made things impossible to fix by telling the truth too late? Or would those words be the very thing that one day pulled her back through the door she just walked out of? And if you had read that journal and discovered someone secretly in love with you but running away out of fear, what would you have said differently from Robert? Tell me in the comments. The universe has a cruel way of testing the promises we make. That night, the house felt like it was holding its breath. Rose barely spoke during dinner. Mary picked at her food, sensing something was wrong. Peter fussed until she finally rocked him to sleep in the back room. Robert sat on the porch steps, staring at the gravel drive where a cab would soon carry them out of his life. Then came the cough. At first, it was a small, dry sound from Mary's room. Kids get colds, he told himself. Then it came again, harder, a hacking sound that made his own throat hurt. By the time Rose burst into the living room carrying Mary, the little girl was flushed and gasping. "She's burning up," Rose said, panic slicing through her voice. "Feel her." Mary's forehead was scorching. "Call Dr. Henry," Robert said instantly. He dialed, but the line rang and rang. Finally, Martin answered Henry's home line. "Doc's in the city." "Won't be back till tomorrow," Martin said. "Roads are a mess. There was a landslide near the main highway. No one's going in or out tonight." "What about a hospital?" Robert asked, trying to keep his voice level. "Nearest one's over an hour if the road was clear," Martin said. "Tonight, it might as well be on the moon." Rose heard enough to understand. "So we just wait," she whispered, clutching her daughter tighter as another wave of coughing racked her small body. "Mrs. Benedict," Martin said. "Old midwife. She knows things. I'll go get her. Hold on." He hung up. They didn't hold on well. Mary's fever climbed. Her cheeks burned red, but her hands felt icy. Sometimes she was lucid enough to whimper, "Mommy, my chest hurts." Sometimes her eyes went glassy, and she called out, "Daddy," to a man who'd been dead a year. Every time, Rose's face crumpled a little more. Mrs. Benedict arrived smelling faintly of herbs and tobacco. She listened to Mary's breathing, frowned, and pressed a weathered hand to the girl's back. "Lungs don't sound good," she murmured. "Pneumonia may be starting. She needs a doctor and medicine." "We have antibiotics," Robert said hurriedly. "Left over from my hospital stay." "Those are for grown men, not little girls," the midwife cut in gently but firmly. "Wrong dose could do more harm than good." "So what do we do?" Rose asked, her voice breaking. "Please, tell me what to do." Mrs. Benedict's eyes softened. "You keep her cool. Clothes with water. Ice under the arms if it gets very high. Pray the fever breaks before it breaks her." Robert had never felt more useless. He'd signed contracts that controlled millions with a flick of his pen. Now, his signature meant nothing against whatever was burning Mary from the inside. They took shifts. Cool cloth on her forehead, then under her neck, then on her wrists. Rose whispered lullabies between sobs. Robert muttered promises to a God he wasn't sure he believed in. "I can't lose her," Rose choked at one point, hands shaking as she changed the cloth again. "I can't lose anyone else, Robert. I can't." "You won't," he said. "I won't let that happen." "You can't promise that," she snapped raw. "You can't promise you won't die. You can't promise she won't. You're just words. Everyone has words." He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "I can promise I won't walk away. I can promise I will fight like hell for her, for you, for both of them, as long as there is breath in my body. That's what I mean when I say I choose you. Not some fairy tale where no one ever gets sick or scared." Her anger crumpled into grief. She collapsed against him, sobbing into his chest. For a long time, they stayed like that, clinging to each other next to the sweating little girl on the couch. Midnight bled into 2 a.m. The numbers on the cheap digital thermometer kept climbing. 103.8, Rose whispered, voice shaking. "Oh God! Oh God!" They filled a basin with cooler water. Mary whimpered weakly as the cloth touched her skin. "Mom," she rasped, eyes barely open. "I'm here, baby," Rose said, forcing a smile. "I'm not going anywhere." "Uncle Robert," she murmured. "I'm here too, kiddo," he said, kneeling so she could see him. "I'm not going anywhere either." "You'll stay," she mumbled. "As long as you want me," he said without thinking. Her lips twitched, like that answer made sense in whatever half-dream she was stuck in. Around 4, the fever hit its peak. 104, Rose said, voice barely a breath. Robert felt panic rise like bile. What if we just give her a little antibiotic? Half the dose. Mrs. Benedict, who had dozed in a chair, woke with the sharpness of someone who'd seen too many such nights. No, she said softly. We wait. We pray. Outside, the wind rose, rattling the blue gate, reminding him how fragile all of this was. Then, slowly, impossibly, the number started to drop. 103.5, 102.8, 101.2. By dawn, Mary's forehead felt merely warm. She rolled onto her side, breathing deeper, more evenly. Mom, she whispered, opening clearer eyes. I'm here, Rose said, tears streaming down her face. I'm here, my love. I had a dream, Mary murmured. Daddy was there. He said it's okay to let Uncle Robert take care of us now. Said he's tired but not mad. Rose's hand flew to her mouth. Robert didn't know what to do with that. He said he's happy, Mary sighed, already half asleep again. As long as you're happy. She drifted off, this time into the easy sleep of a fever broken. The 3 adults in the room stared at one another, the weight of what had just passed hanging between them. You see, Mrs. Benedict said quietly, sometimes the ones we lost do their own kind of doctoring. She left them with a nod and a bag of herbs, muttering something about making tea for courage. Rose sat back on her heels, looking at her daughter, then at Robert. I almost lost her, she whispered. But you didn't, he replied. She's here. You're here. I'm here. We all are. For how long? She asked, the old fear still there, but softer now. How do we live knowing we could lose all of this any second? He reached for her hand. By living it anyway, he said. By not running from the one thing that made this night bearable, that we faced it together. If watching this family fight through a night like that and hold on to each other moved you even a little, hit subscribe so you can see what they do with this second chance. Had that nightmare evening finally proved to Rose that love was worth the risk? Or would the fear of almost losing her child make her cling to safety even tighter, even if safety meant walking away from the very man who stayed up all night to help save her? Sometimes the scariest part isn't almost losing someone. It's realizing you can't imagine life without them anymore. The morning after the fever broke, sunlight felt like a miracle. Mary woke up hungry, which Rose declared was the best diagnosis anyone could ask for. Within hours, she was asking to draw, then to play, then to chase whiskers, though Rose made her rest between every burst of energy. Robert moved through the house in a daze of gratitude and exhaustion. At one point, he stepped into the doorway of the back room. Rose stood by the window, watching Mary nap, one hand braced against the frame. He approached quietly. You should sleep, he said. You were up all night. So were you, she replied. He leaned next to her, shoulder brushing hers. Last night. I meant what I said, he murmured. About choosing you. Choosing this. She stared out at the garden for a long moment. Last night, when you said it, she answered slowly, I wanted to believe you more than I've wanted anything in a long time. She glanced at him. That terrifies me. Me too, he admitted. What if it doesn't work? She whispered. What if you wake up one day and realize you miss your suits and boardrooms more than PB and JS and laundry? What if I wake up and realize I don't? He countered softly. She gave a choked laugh. You always have to flip everything, don't you? Occupational hazard, he said. I spent 20 years turning problems into opportunities. I'm trying to do the same with my life. He turned, gently tilting her chin, so she had to look at him. Rose, I'm in love with you, he said. Madly, inconveniently, terrifyingly in love with you. I love that you burn the toast, but still try again. I love that you remember how I like my coffee after one day. I love that you'd rather sleep in a car than take pity you don't think you earned. I love that you look at my house and see a home before I ever did. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm a widow, she whispered, with 2 kids and no money. My baggage has baggage. Good, he said. Good, she repeated, stunned. It means you know what it is to love and lose. It means you don't take anything for granted. It means you're real. I don't want some shiny, untouched life. I want this one. Yours. Ours. If you'll have me. Her hand trembled as she reached up, cupping his cheek. "Then stop talking," she said hoarsely, "and kiss me before I lose my nerve again." The first touch of her lips was hesitant, almost questioning. Then, as if some dam broke, she leaned into him with years of held-back longing. Everything else, the quiet house, the creak of the floor, the ticking of the old clock, faded. When they finally pulled apart, foreheads resting together, both breathing unsteadily, she laughed through her tears. "This is insane," she said. "I know," he replied. "I've known you for 2 weeks," she said. "Feels like a lifetime," he agreed. "What if we're wrong?" she whispered. "What if we're right?" he whispered back. Later that day, while Mary played with Whiskers in the yard and Peter napped in his makeshift crib, Robert stepped onto the porch with his phone. He dialed Patricia. "Make the sale," he said without preamble. "Sell your share. Take the best deal. I'm not coming back." There was a long silence. "Are you absolutely sure?" she asked at last. "Because once this contract is signed, you're out. It's done. No returns, no secret clauses, no takebacks." He looked through the window. Rose was at the sink, sleeves rolled up, singing off-key to some old song as she washed dishes. Mary popped up beside her, hands still sticky with jam, and Rose laughed, swatting her playfully with a dish towel. "I'm sure," he said. "You're really choosing that," Patricia said. "I'm choosing me," he corrected, "for the first time in a long time. And somehow, me includes them now." When he hung up, he felt something unhook inside him. A line that had tethered him to chrome elevators and conference rooms for decades finally snapped. "You look different," Martin observed later, catching Robert lingering in the garden. "Do I?" Robert asked. "Like a man who finally put down a stone he didn't know he was carrying," the old man replied. "If you've ever fallen for someone in what felt like too little time, did it scare you or make you feel alive? Be honest with me in the comments. I'm curious how many of you would trust a love like this." Dr. Henry returned the next day, poked and prodded, listened, hummed, and finally sat back with a satisfied nod. "Your heart's stronger," he said. "Pull steady. Blood pressure nearly textbook. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." Falling in love. Robert asked dryly. "Loving anything, gardens, kids, a woman who makes you decent coffee, is great cardio," Henry said. "So, you told her?" "Yes," Robert said. "And?" Henry's eyes sparkled. "She kissed me." And she hasn't packed a suitcase since," Robert admitted, unable to hide his grin. "Then why do you look like a man halfway through a marathon instead of at a finish line?" Henry prodded. "Because she still plans like I might leave," Robert said quietly. "She doesn't say it, but I see it in the way she never quite unpacks." "Then give her something to unpack into," the doctor said. "A ring. A promise. A reason to believe this isn't just a very nice vacation fling. Marriage." Robert blurted. "We've known each other for 15 days. "You almost died 3 weeks ago," Henry countered. "She lost her husband a year ago. If anyone understands that time is a luxury, it's you too." "That's crazy," Robert muttered. Henry shrugged. "So is surviving a heart attack and then finding a woman who makes you want to live differently. Maybe crazy is exactly what you need." Was Henry right? Was promising forever this soon reckless, or the only honest thing he could do? And if he asked, would Rose see it as a lifeline, or another storm waiting to destroy everything she'd managed to rebuild? Proposals in movies come with orchestras and sunsets. In real life, they come with chipmugs and leftover cake. Robert couldn't stop thinking about what Henry had said. The idea of marriage felt huge, heavy, final. But the idea of not asking, of living every day waiting for Rose to decide he was temporary, felt worse. That evening, when the kids were finally down, Mary with her doll in one hand and Whiskers at her feet, Peter starfished in his crib, Robert brewed fresh coffee. He sliced the lopsided cake Martin's wife had dropped off for the miracle girl's recovery. Then he called Rose out to the porch. "What's this?" she asked, stepping into the cool night air. "An attempt at romance," he said. "On a budget." The porch light cast a warm pool around them. Beyond that, the stars stretched wide and indifferent. They sat, cups cradled between their hands, comfortable silence wrapping around them for a few minutes. Then Robert cleared his throat. "I need to talk to you about something," he began. She tensed immediately. "That sentence is never good." "It's not bad," he rushed. At least I don't think it is. God, I'm terrible at this. At what? She asked cautiously. He set his mug down, hands suddenly empty and unsure of where to go. Rose, we've spent most of our lives planning, he said. You plan budgets tighter than most CEOs plan mergers. I planned my days down to the minute. And still, life blew both of our plans up. She watched him, eyes dark in the porch light. I could say we should wait, he continued. Wait a year, 2, 5. Be sure. Be sensible. But the truth is, I had a heart attack sitting in a room full of trophies that didn't hug me once. You lost the man you loved on an ordinary workday. If we've learned anything, isn't it that later is a lie we tell ourselves to avoid being brave now? Her fingers tightened around her mug. Robert. He reached for her hand, heart hammering for reasons that had nothing to do with blocked arteries. I don't have a ring yet, he said. I don't have a grand speech. I don't even have a job title anymore. All I have is this. I love you. I love your kids like they're already mine. I love this house with its blue gate and patch floors because it has you in it. And I don't want to wake up another morning wondering if today is the day you decide to leave. He took a shaky breath. So I'm asking, with all my messy, still healing heart, will you marry me? The night went very still. Rose stared at him like her brain had short-circuited. You're serious, she whispered. I've never been more, he said. You don't know what my worst days look like, she argued weakly. When both kids are sick and the car won't start, I cry in the bathroom so they won't see. You haven't seen me exhausted and angry and not pretty. I saw you last night, he reminded her. Sweaty, sobbing, terrified. Holding your daughter, like you will help her to live. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. A sob burst out of her, half laugh, half cry. If I say yes, she whispered, and you wake up one day and realize you made a mistake. I'll wake up every day and choose you again, he cut in. On the days you're singing, and the days you're sobbing on the bathroom floor. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I can promise I won't run when it gets hard. Tears spilled down her cheeks. This is the worst proposal speech I've ever heard, she said, voice shaking. He winced. I know. I told you I'm bad at this. It's perfect, she choked out. Because it's you. She set the mug down with trembling hands, then launched herself at him, nearly knocking him off the porch step. Yes, she said against his shoulder. Yes, you idiot. I'll marry you. He laughed, the sound breaking like something rusty in his chest finally coming free. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her like an anchor. Serious? He asked, just to hear it again. She leaned back, cupped his face, and kissed him hard. Serious, she said. I don't know how this will work. I don't know if I'll wake up some days in panic. But I know this. I'm more afraid of living without you now than of losing you someday. In the doorway, a small voice piped up. Ew. They broke apart to see Mary squinting at them, hair a mess, doll dangling from her hand. Are you kissing again? She demanded. Yes, Rose said, laughing through her tears. And you might as well get used to it. Why? Mary wrinkled her nose. Because, Robert said, crossing the porch to scoop her up, your mom just agreed to let me bother you forever. Mary blinked, then her eyes went wide. You're going to be my real uncle? She asked. Better, he said. I'm going to be your stepdad, if that's okay with you. She considered this very seriously. Only if you still make pancakes, she said at last. Deal, he replied. Word of the engagement spread through the village faster than wildfire in dry grass. The next morning, Martin showed up dragging half the town behind him. We heard there's a wedding, he announced, beaming. And we haven't had a good party in years. We haven't even picked a date, Rose protested, blushing furiously. Next week, Martin said. Plenty of time. Mrs. Carmen makes the best cake, the pastor is free on Thursdays, and my store's back room is perfect for a reception. We'll string up lights. Done. Next week. Robert echoed, dazed. Why wait? Martin shrugged. You two nearly lost each other about 5 times already. Let an old man enjoy some vows before I kick the bucket. If you want to see how this whirlwind wedding comes together, and whether love can really beat a lifetime of chasing money, hit subscribe so you don't miss the final chapters of their story. Could a wedding thrown together in 7 days really build something that would last decades? Or were they tying themselves to a future spun out of sheer adrenaline and relief, hoping love would be enough to hold it all? The wedding didn't look like the ones in magazines. It looked better. A week later, under a sky so blue it hurt, the entire village crammed into the tiny church. Rose wore a simple white dress the neighbor ladies had sewn together in a lightning-fast assembly line. It wasn't couture. It was better. Every stitch held a piece of someone's hope. Her hair was twisted up with wildflowers Mary had picked from the garden. Robert stood at the front in a borrowed suit that was a little tight in the shoulders, trying to remember how to breathe. Dr. Henry had insisted on being there, a stethoscope in his pocket just in case. Martin sat in the front pew, eyes already suspiciously wet. Mary, in a slightly crooked flower girl dress, took her job very seriously until she forgot and started petting Whiskers, who had somehow snuck into the church. Peter, in a tiny vest, promptly decided the aisle was the best place to practice walking and had to be wrangled back by a chuckling neighbor. When the organist hit a slightly wrong note and everyone winced, Rose appeared at the back of the church. Everything went quiet. She walked slowly every step a choice. Not toward the safe life she'd been planning in that cramped apartment 2 hours away, but toward the risk standing at the altar. Their vows weren't perfect. Robert stumbled over her name once because he was trying not to cry. The pastor mispronounced his last name, and Peter started wailing right as they reached, in sickness and in health, which everyone took as darkly comic. But when Robert slid the simple gold band onto Rose's finger, a ring he bought with the first check from the sale of his company, he felt something settle in his bones. He was no longer a man who lived alone in penthouses and conference calls. He was a husband, a stepfather, a man whose wealth now lived in hands he could actually hold. "I pronounce you husband and wife," the pastor said. "You may kiss the bride." They did. Not like a movie, but like two people who had survived enough to know exactly what they were promising. At the reception, held in the back of Martin's store under strings of mismatched Christmas lights, the cake leaned dangerously to one side. Someone had spelled "Congratulations, Robert and Rose" on a homemade banner, and no one had the heart to fix it. They danced anyway. Mary demanded 3 dances in a row with her new dad. Peter fell asleep on Rose's shoulder before dessert. At one point, Martin clinked his glass and cleared his throat. "Speech," someone shouted. "I'm no good with speeches," Martin said, grinning, though everyone knew that was a lie. "But I'll say this. Some folks spend their whole lives chasing more zeros in their bank accounts, thinking that's wealth. Then there are fools like these too," he pointed at Robert and Rose. "Who gives all that up for a drafty old house, 2 noisy kids, and a temperamental cat?" The room laughed. "I say they're the smartest fools I ever met," Martin finished, raising his glass. "To Robert and Rose, may your house always be full and your hearts never be empty." To Robert and Rose. Everyone echoed. Months slipped by. The blue gates saw seasons change. The garden rows had started bursting with more vegetables than they knew what to do with. Robert fixed things around the house one by one, learning the slow satisfaction of a door that closed right because he had finally fixed the hinge. He dipped into his sale money carefully, not as a bottomless pit, but as a bridge. He helped Martin expand the general store with a small cafe corner where Rose sometimes worked mornings, laughing with locals over coffee while Peter colored at a corner table. He set up a little consulting desk in a back room, taking on a few hand-picked clients remotely, not because he needed the money, but because he enjoyed helping small, family-run businesses avoid the mistakes he'd made in giant ones. Most days, though, his office was the porch. His to-do list: fix a fence, plant new seeds with Mary, build a swing for Peter. One crisp morning, a thick envelope arrived from the city lawyer. He sat at the kitchen table as Rose fried eggs, and Mary quizzed him on her spelling homework. "It says urgent," Rose noted, flipping a pancake. "Are we supposed to be scared?" "Only if there's a secret clause that says we have to go back to the city if we ever use their pens," he joked, though his hands shook a little as he slid it open. Inside, the final paperwork confirming the sale of his share in the company. A summary of the wires already transferred. A short, impersonal letter thanking him for his years of leadership. That chapter was officially, irrevocably closed. "Well?" Rose asked, turning off the stove. "It's done," he said. "I'm no longer the CEO of anything." "How does it feel?" she asked, searching his face. He set the papers down and really thought about it. He didn't see skyscrapers. He didn't see the boardrooms. He saw Mary's face that night, and she asked if she had to leave. He saw Rose barefoot in their kitchen. He saw Peter taking his first wobbly steps toward him in the yard yesterday, chubby arms outstretched. Free, he said finally. It feels free. If you had the choice between a high-powered city career and a small, love-filled life like this, which would you really choose? Not the one that impresses people, but the one that lets you sleep at night? Tell me honestly in the comments. Was Robert truly at peace with walking away from the world that had defined him for so long? Or would some part of him always wonder if he'd made a mistake, right as life was about to hand him an even bigger surprise? Some people measure wealth in stocks and real estate. Robert learned true wealth can be announced by a single nervous smile. A few weeks after the envelope, life had settled into a strangely perfect rhythm. Mornings began with coffee on the porch, Rose's head on his shoulder, Mary chattering about school, Peter smearing jam on everything in reach. Afternoons, he'd work a little, fix a little, play a lot. Dr. Henry checked him periodically, half because of the heart, half because he'd fallen in love with Rose's cooking. "You're a different man," the doctor said one day, packing up his kit. "Skin's better. Eyes are brighter. You even complain less." "I hate it." "I complain a lot," Robert said. "Mostly about how hard it is to get paint out of tiny socks." "Ah yes," Henry grinned. "That's called being a dad." One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold, Rose called him into the kitchen. She was standing by the table, wringing her hands in a way he hadn't seen since their early days. "You look like you're about to tell me you crashed the car and set the house on fire," he said, heart giving an anxious thump. "Nothing's on fire," she said quickly. "Well, maybe my nerves." "Okay, now I'm really worried," he said, stepping closer. "What's wrong?" She took a deep breath, then grabbed his hand and put it on her stomach. It was still flat under his palm, warm and familiar. "What am I supposed to be feeling?" he asked, confused. "Not yet," she said, eyes shining. "But in a few months, a lot." His mind blanked. Then the pieces snapped together. "Are you?" She nodded, tears spilling over and a smile glowing brighter than he'd ever seen it. "I'm pregnant," she said. "About 8 weeks. I wanted to be sure before I told you." For a moment, all he could hear was his own heartbeat crashing in his ears. A year ago, that sound had terrified him. Now it felt like music. He laughed a startled, joyful sound and pulled her into a hug, lifting her off her feet before realizing maybe that wasn't ideal. "I'm sorry," he said, setting her down gently but not letting go. We. Words failed him. She cupped his face, tears and laughter mingling. "Are you happy?" she asked, a flicker of old fear in her voice. "Really? Because if this is too much, too soon, Too much what?" he cut in. "Too much love? Too much life? Rose, I was supposed to be dead by now according to every realistic projection. Instead, I got another child. Our child. I've never been this happy or this terrified in my life." He sank to his knees, pressing his forehead to her stomach. "Hi," he said softly to the life they'd made. "It's your very grateful, slightly over-the-hill dad. I promise to stick around as long as this heart keeps beating. And I promise that every beat is for you, your mom, your brother, and your sister." In the doorway, Mary pretended to gag again. "If you two start kissing, I'm moving out," she declared. "You can't," Robert said, standing and scooping her up. "You sign a lifetime contract when you let me be your dad, remember?" Peter toddled in, glanced around, and perhaps sensing the emotional overload, decided to lighten the mood by attempting to climb Whiskers, who retaliated with a hiss and a retreat to higher ground. The kitchen filled with laughter and chaos, cats and kids, pots bubbling over, and toast burning just a little. Robert looked around, taking it all in. The blue gate he'd once resented now framed sunsets he looked forward to. The house he had abandoned for 12 years was now full of noise, mess, and more love than his cold penthouse had ever seen. He'd returned here because his heart had failed him. He stayed because his heart had finally fully awakened. If stories like this, where someone walks away from everything the world calls success and finds something richer instead, mean something to you, subscribe so you don't miss the next ones we tell. He'd let go of an empire to build a family. He'd traded conference calls for bedtime stories, profit margins for pancake breakfasts, and corner offices for a worn spot on a porch swing with the woman he loved. Looking at Rose, at the children, at the life they'd stitched together from fear, second chances, and unthinkable choices, one question settled in his mind forever. What good is a fortune if it never buys you a place and people you can finally call home?